So much, everybody, for joining us today, making time to be here today. It really is appreciated. As I said, I'm asking people just to leave their cameras off and themselves on mute for now, just to help with the recording. But if you want to ask anything or you want to contribute anything, absolutely, please, of course, turn your cameras back on and turn your microphone back on. That isn't a problem at all. I love hearing from you. If you don't fancy doing any of that, the chat is always open. Please put your comments in there, your thoughts, your feelings, whatever you want to share with us today can be put in the chat as well. So you don't have to come on camera and you don't have to speak if you don't feel comfortable. Back in January, we talked about energy and planning for trust fundraising, and that sparked a lot of conversation. And what I really noted through all your follow-up questions and feedback was how many people were looking to take the time to reflect on your own capacity, your own pressure points, and also sustainability in trust. And so today is very much a continuation of that conversation. It's not about adding more to your to-do list. It's about how we think about trust fundraising in a way that helps us to keep going, that helps us to keep motivated when sometimes that's the last thing we feel or that's the last thing we want to do. Letting the last few people in. What stood out from those conversations that I've been having and that feedback wasn't people asking for more tools, it was people asking how to use what we talked about in real life situations. Energy mapping in particular prompted a lot of questions around how does this help me when my pipeline already feels full? How do I plan realistically when everything feels urgent? How do I sustain energy levels that I'm giving to my role? Maybe I'm giving more because I feel like my plate is full, so I'm doing more than I necessarily have the energy to do. And how do I cope with the added pressure that I'm feeling right now? You know, lots of income streams are struggling, and lots of organizations are looking towards trust as a way, particularly for core costs, to pick up some of that slack, which puts on a lot of extra pressure for us. At the same time, I was being asked all of those questions. Beth Upton posted a blog on resilience, and that really, really resonated with me. And I'm going to share that link, Beth's blog, in the chat for you to go and have a look at when you have a spare couple of moments, and just have a little read of it for yourself. Sorry, I've just got to let somebody else in there into the lobby. Fantastic. A few of you mentioned it to me directly, and it echoed what I'm hearing across the wider sector as well. There's a lot of difficult conversations happening right now about funding gaps, about increased demand for our services, and therefore increased demand on us as trust fundraisers to find more income, and how much pressure fundraisers are carrying at the moment. And I think that's felt quite a lot, particularly for us as trust fundraisers, as people look to us to fill those gaps. We talked about this last month, but resilience in trust fundraising isn't about pushing harder or coping better with those impossible workloads. It's about working more realistically and knowing what that looks like for you. And for me, that's where all this talk about energy, capacity, and pipeline planning all comes together. So let's do a quick exercise. It's not going to be, can you do 10 push-ups for me? It's a much less strenuous exercise. So take 30 seconds now and think about your current trust pipeline. What's live, what's coming up, what's sitting in the background, and then as you think about it, ask yourself one question: how does my pipeline feel to me right now? And put a one-word answer in the chat. So that could be stretched, manageable, if you've got a really good pipeline. Challenging, Ruth, thank you. That's an absolute great example. Long, Erica. Pressured, maybe. Balanced, sparse, Rachel. You know, this is how we're thinking at the moment, and this is what we're carrying, potentially without even realizing that we're carrying this pressure. We've got all of these things going on. We're looking for new opportunities. We're applying to the opportunities that we see, and our pipeline is kind of hanging over us as our pressure point. And those words are probably how you are feeling about trust fundraising for you and your organization at the minute. Messy, Ariane. Is that how you're feeling about things at the minute? Daunting, Juliet? These are all really good words to sum up how we are feeling at the minute. And what I always find really interesting about pipelines is that they can look fine on paper or on your screen, but they can feel really different in practice. They can cause you stress you didn't even realize was there. These are what these words are showing to us, aren't they? That this is the stress that we're carrying. Or they can be a really helpful thinking tool that can help you plan your year. And that's exactly where tools like energy mapping, capacity thinking, and pipeline planning come in to help us plan in a way that's more resilient and useful, and hopefully can help us change some of those more negative words into more positive, or at least less stressful words that we're carrying around with us. So we talked about last month, I always think it's good to know when your own high and low peaks of energy are. It helps to know when you're at your most productive. And for me, that real value comes when you use that knowledge alongside your pipeline planning. So when looking at your pipeline, wanting to make changes, energy mapping helps you think about when different types of trust tasks sit best, not just what needs to be done on that way. So I was asked for some practical ways to use this. So you can identify when trust tasks need high focus. So that for me would be reworking bids, researching really complex bids, children in need bid and national trust bid. Pulling those together and researching those might take you a little bit more of your energy. Identifying lower energy tasks, so light research, some reporting that's really simple, or they give you a reporting form to fill in that's really lovely and simple, some follow-ups, some emails, some email introductions, things like that, where you don't have to do as much thinking. They're really important tasks, but they don't take so much of your energy. So then when you review your pipeline, you ask yourself, are all my high energy tasks landing in the same weeks or the same months? Do I always do them in the morning? Do I do them in the afternoon? Is that because that's where my energy peaks and troughs are, or just where it's naturally fallen? Can I map these out differently, or is that not possible due to deadlines? We know what it's like when you're working against a deadline. So can I plot some lower energy tasks to avoid burnout that month? If I know I'm going to be working on a big application like Garfield Western or like a national lottery that take up a lot of brain capacity, I might then decide to do some lower energy tasks in that week, in that month, to give my energy levels, my stress levels, chance to just plateau out, level out. And so I feel like I'm in a good place and I'm not always running on that kind of high energy adrenaline. Can I even add in some downtime, dare I say it, or holiday, to really give my brain a break? Are there points when you know that you've got a reapplication coming up? You've just had a 3-year grant and now that's coming to an end, so you want to make another application, so you know when that's all going to happen. Can you add in some downtime or some holiday, take some toll around that time to give your brain a break? I know that's not always possible, but if you can kind of try and structure your months and your pipeline to allow you some of that leeway, it's really good for your own mental health. This is about avoiding energy bottlenecks before they happen while still using our time really productively. And that's what using your pipeline as a thinking tool and thinking about your own energy and your own capacity can really, really help you do. One of the simplest resilience checks you can do is to scan your pipeline for those pressure points. Pressure doesn't always come from one large application. It can come from clusters of work that require that really high energy that we talked about. What I'd really recommend you do after this session is have a look at your pipeline. Think about what points caused you stress last year, and then highlight any periods where you have multiple deadlines for big applications, several really writing heavy applications that require a lot of your brain capacity. Are there lots of reports that are due at the same time? Then ask yourself, is that realistically deliverable with the energy and capacity that you have? Are there small steps now that you can take to protect your future peace? Are there things that you can do to use your energy peaks and troughs to make your pipeline work more efficiently? That then turns your pipeline from a forecasting tool into a real working thinking tool, and also an early warning system to say, right, March is looking really heavy here. What can I do to move some of these things around? Does the application to that brand new trust need to go in March? When's their deadline? Great, it's not till May, so that I can have a look at that in April just to free up some of my capacity and some of my time. And then when you're planning for the year ahead, I know what it's like when you have that pressure on you. All you're thinking about is how many applications can I get done and how much do I need to put out there to meet my targets. That's really what it is. But actually, if you're looking to be more resilient and you're looking to use your pipeline differently, then another way to look at it is what's happening in those months that will affect my capacity. So not only what have you got on your plate in terms of trust applications, prospect researching, reports. If you list everything that we do, it's a real lot, isn't it? It's also looking at your competing organizational demands as well. And I think this is something that we forget to factor in when we're looking at our pipeline and we're planning out our work for the year. It's looking at everything that you contribute organisationally to. So do you help with the annual reports? Do you have any internal, external audits that you have to be a part of? Are you part of any campaign or project planning? Do you contribute to board reports, or are you at a senior level where you have to go and present those board reports? Are you working on lots of other income streams? Because I know a lot of us aren't just trust fundraisers, a lot of us are sole fundraisers and we have to do everything. So you need to be factoring in that too into your pipeline and having a look what your actual capacity is once you overlay all those different elements. You can also look at any organizational changes that that are coming up. It could be that your head of finance is leaving and you might have to spend some time with their replacement. So you won't be able to get quite as much done as you thought you would that month because you have to do some training maybe. We have to train a new member of staff. So again, you're not going to get quite as much as you want to do. So rather than looking at your pipeline and panicking about how much that you need to do, give yourself that space and time to have a look at it and make those amends where you need to make sure that you're using the energy and time that you do have really, really efficiently. And again, this is something that I often forget about. There's your emotional energy. We all know what it feels like when we receive a no to a big application that we've been working on for weeks and weeks and weeks, and how much that can sap your emotional energy. If you know when those outcomes are due, you can plan lower tasks for around that time. That's what I tend to do. So if I know that I might be getting an outcome, I try and put some lower thinking, lower energy tasks around that time in case it's a no. And in case it's something that's bad news, or even if it's good news, you want to have time to celebrate that. You want to have time to share that with your colleagues, with your friends. You want to have time to relish in all that hard work coming off in something amazing. So building in some buffer zones that helps prevent pipelines that look fine on paper but feel overwhelming in practice. And it might mean that you can actually take some much needed holiday as well, because you can build that into your pipeline and look at those points where you can go away and not feel the pressure while you're away on holiday. So we talked about this last month, and from the feedback and questions that I have, it really seemed to resonate with you that a lot of people use their pipeline as a way of forecasting income, and that is absolutely great, and that is absolutely as you should use it, because it gives you a steer of what you need to do, what else you need to put into it, looking at your average gift level, all those good things. But your pipeline can work so much harder for you and can make your life so much easier if you use it as a thinking and planning tool rather than looking at the income you can identify for your organization. So where are you asking yourself to be at full capacity for too long? It comes back to that kind of energy mapping and using your peaks and troughs and thinking about future you and trying to protect future you. If you're doing too much of the same task all at the same time for too long, or you're working late to fulfill deadlines, or you're not taking that really holiday and whole time that you have, that will lead to burnout. Is there anywhere where your pacing could be improved? Could you add some of those lower energy tasks in? What trade-offs are you making without realizing? Are you working late to fit work in? Are you taking holiday at inconvenient times? Or are you not using your full application at all, or having to use it all at once to use it up? Oh, here's the cat. Here's the cat. Come and join us. Come down, little one. She loves people, so she always hears my voice and then wants to come and see what's going on. What I'd really recommend is that you review your pipeline at least once a month, or if there's any change to your potential capacity. Don't just update probabilities and outcomes, but check whether it still reflects what's reality for you. If something big has suddenly landed on your plate, then have a look at your pipeline, see what's coming up, see what you need to shift around, what can be left till later, what could be done at another time, what is the best use of your time, energy, capacity in the most efficient way possible. So I hope those tips are helpful and kind of fill in some of the gaps that we had from last week's. One of the biggest resilient tools we have to use in trust fundraising is focus. A pipeline packed with poor fit prospects just creates more pressure with less returns. We were talking about the words that we were using earlier, and people were saying that it was long and it was daunting and it was complex. Are there things that we can do? Because it might be that you've inherited your pipeline or haven't had time to go through it yourself, or you're worried about getting rid of potential because you think, oh, I'm going to exhaust my trust fundraising list if I get rid of ones. You don't necessarily need to discount them altogether, but you definitely need to make sure that you're putting your focus in the right place. So think about which trusts are genuinely really well aligned with your work. Do you need to do some more research on them to make sure that they are aligned with your work? Do you need to add a confidence level next to each prospect? This is something that I do with the people that I work with. We put a confidence rating in. We also use cold and warm and things like that to just show where, if I'm short on time, is best for me to use that time. Is it that I need to warm somebody up because my confidence level with them would be high if we were warmer, or if we were closer to them, or are they already a warm prospect? So that is where I need to spend my time because I'm more likely to get another gift from them. It can really help you make those decisions around fit and alignment. What relationships do you need to nurture over time? Maybe a brilliant fit, but they don't accept unsolicited applications. Then these will need more time to come up with a solicitation plan and then enact that plan. Does your pipeline give you scope to be able to do that, or is it all about sending out those applications and trying to hit your targets and trying to get things out there, when actually it's about stepping back, and it's not about doing less for the sake of it. It's about protecting our energy that we talked about before and improving your effectiveness. If you're putting more out there that you really think is a good fit and that you've given yourself time to have a look at some of that prospecting and fit and build up those relationships, then you're going to get a better outcome, or at least you've made sure that you've made it so the outcome is the best one, you know, that you are so sure that you've done everything that you could do, even if it's a no, you are still proud of everything that you've put in to try and get that income in from that particular trust. So focus is another really good one. And it's, you know, you can keep those ones that you've identified and maybe you're not a really good fit. And if you have a little bit of downtime, you suddenly have a little bit more capacity, then you can go for those ones and you can put some things out there. But when you're looking at efficiency and resilience, you need to be working with those ones where you're an absolute amazing fit, or you have a really strong way in, you've got a brilliant solicitation plan that you've been able to build up and then enact because you've focused on those ones that are the best fit for your organisation. And then I had a really, really thoughtful question from Sophie today ahead of today's session about capital appeals. And she was particularly wanting to know how to approach funders early, especially when it feels like sometimes you've only got one shot to get it right. And I think the first thing I'd say, and I'd be really interested, and Sophie would too, if any of you are working on a capital appeal at the moment or are looking to work on a capital appeal, how you feel about some of these things. But I kind of wanted to really gently challenge that idea of that you only get one shot to put yourselves up there, particularly for larger capital appeals. It's very rarely, in my experience, about that one single moment or that one perfect pitch. You've only got that one chance to impress them. For me, it's a process. And actually, the organisations that are most successful with capital appeals are usually the ones that start engaging funders before they're ready to apply, that they do that stewardship, they do that introduction, they do that relationship building first. So rather than thinking we need to get this right in one go, which can feel really daunting and really overwhelming, I think it can be more helpful to think, how do we start bringing funders into our capital appeal journey, and when do we need to bring them in? And again, that's where your pipeline becomes really powerful, not just as a list of people you're going to apply to, but also as a plan for engaging the people that you want to get to know this new amazing capital appeal project that you're going to be doing. So again, if anybody's working on a capital appeal at the moment, Sophie's looking for others. Please do share your experiences, pop your camera on, have a chat with us, pop any thoughts and feelings you have about capital appeals in the chat. It would be really, really useful for Sophie. So when you're working on a capital appeal, your pipeline, needs to do a bit of a different job. Like we talked about before, it's not just when you're applying and who are you applying to, it's that who do we need to bring on the journey really early? Who's going to be the ones that are going to take a little bit longer to warm up? Where have we already got those relationships that we need to let them know what's going on? What stage are they at right now? Have they already given us a gift? So we can't do that now, but we might be able to start having that conversation with them anyway, because you're looking at what's going to happen in the next 6 to 12 months. What's the next step? Is it an introduction, a conversation? Is it sharing those plans? It's not always an application straight away. Sometimes it's getting in touch with your contact if it's a warm trust, and letting them know what's going on, feeling them out and seeing whether that's something that they're going to be interested in. And again, if it's a cold contact, that can still be something that you do at this point. You're picking up the telephone, you're writing them an email to let them know this amazing capital appeal that you've got going on. Would they like to hear more? Would they like to come along? And we're going to talk in a minute about some events. But it's just dropping those seeds now. It isn't necessarily just one application that you're going to make to get in front of them. It's about trying to get your foot in the door, trying to get a warm contact to speak to for those where it's a bit more cold, and for those where it's already warm, it's taking that contact that you already have and starting to have those conversations. But it's also about looking internally to see who's best to have that conversation. It might be you might have an amazing you might have an amazing relationship with the trust administrator, and that might be the right way to go in. But it might be that you want your CEO, your head of service, the project manager, to have those initial conversations, because they can talk really passionately about your project and outline what's going to take place. It might not be them that actually put the application in further down the line. It might be something you do as a joint venture, but it's worth having a think about who is best placed internally to have those initial conversations. And then it's thinking about capacity again, thinking about what do we have the capacity to do really well, and where do we need to best spend our time. So is it with those warm, which I would say it is, those warm prospects that we have, those warm trusts that are already giving to us, they're going to be more open to knowing about a capital appeal that we've got going on. So we need to start with our time there. But then also looking at the next stage down, who out of the prospects that we have, could we warm up? Who's the best person to speak to those people? Where can we take these relationships to get them ready to receive an application a little bit further down the line? Because again, if we leave it all until we're ready to apply, we've got all our ducks in a row, we've got all the information that we need, then it can feel really high pressured. And it can feel that you've got to suddenly do everything at once, and you just won't have the capacity to do that. Whereas if you map it all out and use our pipeline as a thinking tool to identify those people and where you're going to put your time and where you're going to use the time, it suddenly becomes more manageable. And for me, this is why having a silent phase built into your capital appeal planning really helps, because it gives you time to map out all of these things, and then you can see on your screen it's a robust plan, and you can start putting that plan into action because your organization, because you have given yourself time to do some of that silent phase working, where you're doing those reaching out conversations, you're bringing people in before you launch anything to the public. Is usually what a silent phase is, in case anyone hasn't had any experience of doing a capital appeal. And it's always a good place, I think, is if you can launch your capital appeal with some money, or at least some pledges in the bank, before you take it kind of public and put it out there. So I would definitely look at putting in a silent phase if you have the time to do that into your planning. So if any of you are working, I haven't seen any comments in the chat yet. If you are working on a capital appeal, how are you currently engaging funders? Are you doing that before the application stage? I mean, as trust fundraisers, this is something we need to get better at doing anyway, about reaching out before we even put an application in, and having those kind of pre-application conversations to try and build that warmer relationship with, because trust fundraising is turning very relationship based as everything gets more competitive, slightly more akin to major donors in that way, that we're trying to build that trust. But I think for capital appeals in particular, it's really important that you have those conversations up front and at the beginning, so it doesn't become a one shot and we're done kind of relationship with them. And I think, again, this comes back to it not being that one shot and we're done. It doesn't need to be a fully formed pitch at this point. In fact, it's often better if it isn't. So you can start with a conversation, not a proposal. You can, as long as you have enough information to talk about why you're doing what you're doing, what the impact of that would be, what the benefits of that will be, you can start having those conversations already and opening those doors. You can then position it as an opportunity to share those early plans, particularly for someone who is already a supporter, to be able to do, say that, we're so grateful for all your support, so we want to share our plans with you early. We really appreciate everything that we can do with you as a supporter of ours, and it just helps them feel more aligned and more akin with your organisation. Ask for input or feedback. not just for funding at this stage. You know, what do you think of our plans? Have you supported things like this before? What's worked? What hasn't worked? And you can use them as a sounding board, because then they'll feel, again, aligned and akin to what you're doing, and then they're more likely to want to help and support you with a grant, with a gift, as you move through having those conversations. Be really clear about your scale and your ambition and what you want to achieve, but don't feel like it has to be perfect at this stage. And listen, that's a really important step at this stage. What questions are they asking you? What are they really interested in? Do they raise any concerns? Are there things that you need to address with them before you might be able to move on to asking them for a gift? Is it the concerns that they have? If they're really interested in something, if they're asking you lots of questions about a particular aspect of what you're telling them about, that's something that you can note down and you can use in your solicitation plans and your stewardship plans as you move through. That something really resonated with them there. And that really helps you then to shape your eventual proposal when you get there with them. We've had some chat through. Erica says, well, I've just finished capital appeal, only joined the team right at the end of the appeal, but I know that we had a large grant secured before we went live, and that really helped to drive more grants. It definitely does, because people then feel kind of, they have that trust, don't they? They feel safe and secure that you've already got that kind of grant in the pot. Now that the project's underway and we've hit target, I'm going to reach out to funders to celebrate and invite them to see the progress. Perfect stewardship there. Really good that you're already thinking about what's the next step, what's the next stage for them, what you're going to do with them. Phil says, yes, I definitely look to contact Trust before an application, send an email, plus we've done an update video on a previous capital appeal project that many of the same funders give to. Another great idea there, looking at how you can use video to update as an update tool, but also to get them ready for the next step, the next stage, what's happening next. You know, once you've done your capital appeal, what are you going to do with the people that gave to that appeal? How are you going to keep them warm? What are they going to go on to give to next? That's all things you need to think about in your stewardship plan. And then a lovely Sophie who put our question for us today forward, just saying that they're at the very early stage of capital appeal planning and want to start with conversations with potential funders. I'm keen to have these conversations soon. If anybody's got any tips on would people typically send their CEOs to these meetings? How do you ensure people feel the excitement that we feel and that the appeal has momentum? For me, if your CEO is the best person to send your CEO. If they're not great, because not all CEOs are at public speaking or not great having conversations with potential donors in that way, send whoever is. It doesn't always have to be your CEO. It can be the best person to sell your project, and it can be a different person per trust. You know, if somebody knows somebody in the trust, absolutely use that leverage and send that person in to speak to them. But somebody who can be a good fit with one trust isn't necessarily a good fit with another trust. And how do you ensure people feel? I think, again, that's using the right person to go in there, because if their passion and excitement for that project comes across, then they will start to feel it too. Make sure that you have some really good beneficiary stories that you can share, that you can talk about what difference your capital appeal is going to make to people that are you already using your service. You know, get across, because it's that people story and the person sharing that story that is going to bring across that excitement for you. So it all depends on who that person is for your organisation, and it all depends on who's the best fit with the particular trust that you're wanting to have that conversation with. You know, if you know that a trustee has a particular passion for an aspect of your work, and you know someone in your organisation that knows so much about that aspect of your work, then potentially they're the right person to pair up with that trust and send them in to have those conversations. And then she also asks, have people found success in inviting funders to the public consultation stage for feedback for capital appeals? So this is something that I've just pulled together some notes about, because it's one of the things that Sophie asked. And I think this is a really, really good idea if you can get them to come along. If you want trusts and foundations to attend something like this, then it is really helpful to have already had a level of contact beforehand. Otherwise, it can feel like it's a really cold, out of the blue ask. And it's often really hard to get trust to attend events anyway, because they're being asked by lots of people to come along to lots of things and they just don't have the time. And where your organisation is based might not be where you want people from the trust to come along. As well, so it might involve some travel for them, which might not always be possible, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't invite them. It means looking at how you're going to use that invitation, not just if they attend, but if they don't attend as well, and getting your solicitation stewardship plan in place at the very beginning and saying, okay, if such and such comes, this is what we're going to do with them on the day. If they don't, this is how we're going to follow up with them, because the invitation is the conduit to whatever happens next and whatever conversation you have next with them. So it's important to look at it from both angles. What if they come? What if they don't come? So when you're building your list, have a look at who you already know and who already knows your work really well and would expect to be invited along to something like that. Have they already heard about your project before they receive that invite? Because that's really important. Just getting an invite out of the blue probably isn't enough to motivate them to come along, even if they are really warm to what you do. So it's about having that conversation first and letting them know that that invitation will be on the way to them. Will they have an opportunity to ask questions if they come along? And if they don't come along, when you send them whatever you're going to send them next, if it's a pack of information, if it's ringing them up and having a conversation with them, they need to get something next. Will there be an opportunity for them to ask questions about anything they've seen or read, either at the event, in your follow-up if they have come along, and in your follow-up if they haven't come along? Because you've got to make sure that it isn't just about presenting information at the event. It's helping people connect with the need that you're trying to fulfill, the ambition that you have, that passion that you have, the people that are going to be behind that project, whoever it is that's going to be the face of that project. That could be you, that could be your CEO, that could be a project manager. It's about, like you said, getting that passion across. And I think if you pick the right people, like I said, to have those conversations, to be there and present when you're doing the event, to really showcase why they believe in your project, that passion will resonate through. And if you have a good mix of warm supporters, from whatever income stream that comes from, that can talk really passionately about your work amongst the others and why they support you, that also helps to create that passion. So make sure you have a good mix of people there. Follow-up plan, really, 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 really important. And you must have a bespoke follow-up plan for every trust, whether they come or whether they haven't come. I always find it really hard to get trusts to come along to events. It works slightly better if there's a draw for them to come, so a really good speaker, it's in a really accessible venue, or a venue that is really interesting, or somewhere they want to go and visit. If it's your organisation's venue, then what would be the draw for them to come along? Is it because they get to speak to some of your beneficiaries? Is there somebody really high profile in your organisation that people would want to come along and speak to? Do you have a celebrity ambassador or a really well-known ambassador that can talk really passionately on your behalf about your capital appeal, that might be a draw to get people to come along? It's really tricky with trusts to know whether they'll come along to something or not, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't invite them along. It just means you really need to think about your follow-up, like we talked about, and that you'll follow up if they don't come along. What are you going to do next? What are you going to show them next? What conversation are you going to have next? Because you might find more don't come than they do come. And then just a quick note before we finish on capital appeals on larger funders, particularly ones like Garfield Weston, Denise Coates, things like that. They can be absolutely fantastic supporters of capital projects, but because they tend to receive a high volume high volume of applications, you might not be able to do some of that pre-conversation that we've talked about, unless you already have a really warm relationship with them or have a warm connection with them. So in those cases, really strong alignment is really key. Why would they want to support your capital appeal above any others? What's the evidence of need that you have? And showing that evidence and the impact is really essential. Make sure that you factor in that timelines for those might be longer, so you might want to have a look at those ones first. And if you are doing a silent phase, those are definitely applications that I would look at in your silent phase, because they're probably going to take a bit longer. Some larger ones don't have a formal pre-application conversation process. So yes, your written applications will then suddenly really matter. But again, it's looking at alignment, it's looking at impact, it's looking at that evidence of need and making sure that you have all of that. And looking if you do have any existing connections. Now is really, really the time. If you're going to go to them for a big capital appeal, is to have a look if you have any of those existing connections, your trustees, your delivery partners. Have you had previous funding? Now is the time to use those leverages to get your way in. You know, if you're ever going to use them, now for a capital appeal is the time. And again, use your pipeline. Where do you already have a connection? Are we starting from scratch for these? How much time do I need to leave to be able to do that? Is this one shot because I can't build a relationship and I just have to go for it? Or am I looking to build a relationship over time, so it's going to take me a bit longer to do that? So Sophie, I hope you really found that helpful. If Sophie is able to pop her contact details in, if that's something you want to do, Sophie, please feel free, and then people can contact you later. Or maybe you want to pick Erica's brains about her capital appeal that she's just done offline, and get some more information that way. But I really hope you found some of that useful. And I think this next section really links back up to those follow-up plans we talked about when inviting trust to events. Through the work that I do, the consultation work that I do, I often hear how little space people have to do that stewardship. Even though we know it's really, really important, we're so busy doing our applications that stewardship is often the first thing that slips away, and it's not always attached to the same way. Like there's no deadline necessarily to do it, or we don't always see it as productive because we need to do this application and we need to get this deadline in. So it's not something we always make a priority. Sometimes we do if it's a warm trust and one that we've been talking to for a while, but we don't always do that with newer trusts, and we don't always do that pre-stewardship before we make that application. But again, this is where trust pipelines can be really powerful. We can use it for planning, we can use it for stewardship, we can use it for solicitation. It's not just a forecast, it's a way for us to be able to plan and look and see and make sure that we have everything in place and that we don't forget anything. So I think make sure you're looking at your progress reports, make sure you're building in time for follow-up, make sure you're building in time for relationship building as well. Stewardship is part of the work that we do, and it's important that we give ourselves time to do it. So I also had a really good question coming from Erica about applying for core funding, particularly when a funder says they support both core and project costs. And I think this is something many of us wrestle with, especially if you're more used to writing project or capital bids. There can be a sense that project funding feels clearer, it feels safer, and it's easier to explain, so we can default to that a lot of the time. We know core funding is incredibly valuable, and for many of us, we're being asked to find more and more of it through trust. I'm hearing this a lot from a lot of you, that core funding seems to be the buzzword to be able to try and get that from trust, and it's still really tricky to find anyone that will do that. So when you get an opportunity like this, you really need to remember that core funding isn't a vague ask. necessarily. You still need to put forward something that's clear and specific and connected to impact. And then think about fit. Think about not just what they fund, but what are they trying to achieve and how do we best align with that? So is that our core work? Can the core work that we do demonstrate fit, or does our project work best demonstrate it? And that's how I would look at it when I'm making that decision whether to go for core or whether to go for project, because you often know what it is that you need. Project can often be easier to explain, but core is usually, you know, what everyone is clamoring at you to try and get. But what it looks for is to try and go, actually, does our core work align better and demonstrate impact better, so is more likely to be successful, or does our project work align better and demonstrate our impact and that alignment, and so that would have a better outcome. When you're looking at core costs and how to make that a strong ask, you want to think about, is there a particular service within those core costs that might help you anchor your ask better? Is it a specific group of beneficiaries? Is it a defined area of your work in a particular geographical area that will sit better? So you're still telling a really clear story. This is the need, this is what we do, this is the difference it makes, and this is what it costs. But you're thinking about it in terms of salaries, overheads, running costs, but they're not particularly linked to a project. They're linked to a set of beneficiaries, they're linked to a core aspect of your work. So looking at it that way, it still feels like a really tangible, fundable, impactful ask. You're not just saying, oh, we need a salary for a nurse, for example. You're still telling that story, you're still pitching it in a way that will really align to whatever it is the trust is trying to achieve through that gift, through that grant. And again, this is where I think that pipeline becomes a really good thinking tool, rather than defaulting to, oh, we should do a project bid because it feels stronger. You can step back and look at what your pipeline is showing you. Have you done lots of project bids? Is it now time to look at a core cost bid? Does that fit with what the funder's prioritising? Where is that strongest fit for you? Is it that your core cost, like we said, aligns better? Is it the story you can tell there aligns better because it gives you more scope to be aligned with what the trust is looking for? Or is it looking at it that your project, because you can show more impactful outcomes and impact that way? Do you have the capacity to develop whatever you need to develop at that moment? For core costs, if it's, you know, that's going to tell, I need to get more information, I need to get a better budget, I need to get a better breakdown. Is there a different way I can present some of our beneficiary stories? You know, do I have the capacity to do that right now if it's not an amazing fit? If it's an amazing fit and that's the right way to go, you have to give yourself that capacity to be able to do it. But if you think, oh, I need to go for core costs, so I need to develop all this, but you haven't got time to do it, and actually project costs are a better fit anyway, then is it time to develop that? Do you need to set some time aside to do that another time when you have that more energy, when you're in your high energy phase? So you can do that properly, you can do that and work that best. But it's absolutely looking at what's the best alignment and what fits best. Partnership opportunities. Is there a partnership opportunity that you can go for to be able to put in some of that core cost funding or project funding there as well? That might be something that you want to explore. They can be brilliant going for a partnership bid, but they take a lot of time, energy and coordination to pull off. So again, think about whether that's the right fit for your time and energy, your organization's time and energy, whether you've got the time and the right person within the organization to dedicate to that partnership working. And does it strengthen your bid in any way? Does it make your project bid stronger if you go in as two partnership organizations? Does it mean you can do more? Does it fit better? Is there a better alignment? If all those things are yes, absolutely go for that partnership bid. But if not, if you're stronger on your own, if you're stronger as core, if you're stronger as project, then that's the decision that you need to make. It's about making that conscious decision rather than reacting to what you think the funder is looking for. You need to really drill down into how best you align. Sometimes core funding is the strongest, most honest ask. Sometimes project fits better. But that's what you really need to sit down and decide. If you have the wonderful opportunity of being able to go for either or, which doesn't always happen, does it? Then you really need to sit down and work out what is going to give you the best chance of meeting what they want to achieve, what impact they want to show with that funding. Rich said, this is so helpful. Often I'm asked to raise project costs, but when I get the budget breakdown, it's almost all staffing and overheads. Absolutely. I mean, if we look at anything that we do in terms of project, a lot of the project costs are going to be staffing and overheads, but you can still present that as a project. That is still a project, as long as the staffing and kind of you can proportion out what's part of that overheads and part of that staffing of the project. And don't forget, a lot of trusts now are having allowing that overheads to be put into, and you should be building overheads into every project that you put forward. I've seen people put as high as 35% overheads into a project budget. I'm not sure I'd go that high personally. I'm still at the kind of 10 to 12%, but maybe I'm old school with that. Maybe I'd go up to 20% if the overheads were proportionate. That's the other thing to look at as well, is to make sure that when you're adding in those overheads, they look proportionate to what you're asking for your project. And sometimes I do that by having a look at the cost per head and seeing how much that increased the cost per head. If the cost per head is suddenly wildly ridiculous because I put in all of those overheads, no trust is going to support that. You know, if something goes from being £100 per head, that's a pretty good project outcome, isn't it? £100 to see someone through a particular course or workshop or service support, and then you add in the overheads and suddenly that goes up to £300, £400 per head. That seems less kind of value for money for the trust. So it's as trust fundraisers, having a look at that and having those conversations with your finance department or whoever helps set your budgets, and having a look at what's realistic for that. So I hope that's helpful. A little look at core costs there. If you have the opportunity to go for core costs, because it comes up so rarely and most of what we're doing is project cost work, I would absolutely grab it if you can, but only if it's a good fit and it's going to give you the best chance of that trust saying yes. Because at the end of the day, that's what we do as trust fundraisers, isn't it? It's to put forward kind of our best foot forward, our best chance at having this. As long as we're happy that we've put forward the absolute best application, best proposal that we can, using all the information we have at our disposal at the time, we can be safe in the knowledge that even if it's a no, we've done the absolute best that we can with what we had to decide with at the time. So Erica, who asked that lovely question about core costs, has popped her contact details in the chat. So if anybody wants to get in touch with her and have a chat more about that topic, she'd be really, really grateful to hear from you. So when you use energy mapping to inform your capacity to shape your pipeline, trust fundraising, for me, becomes more intentional, more productive and more efficient, and helps us then do some of these other things that we've talked about. Helps us look at capital appeals, helps us plan better for those capital appeals because we have more space to do that, helps us to make those decisions about core costs and project funding and work up new projects or work up a core cost proposal if we haven't already got those kind of things in place. And for me, that's what resilience looks like in practice. It's not pushing harder because we get enough of that. It's about planning smarter and being kind to the future you. If you're struggling to give yourself permission to do any of this, then ask yourself, if nothing changes, how will my pipeline feel in 3 months' time? If I was to ask you that same question again about how your pipeline is feeling to you, would you put the same answer, that one word answer, into the chat in 3 months' time if you do nothing? Or are there things that you can do? Are there points where you're at risk of burnout and of overload and of not allowing yourself to have any time off? And what small adjustments can you make now to reduce pressure that you might feel further down your pipeline in the months that are to come? If you have a look at your overall pipeline rather than just taking it month by month, if you have a look and see what small changes you can make to give yourself that space, give yourself some more focus, clear out some of those trusts that, you know, just aren't as well aligned as you'd like them to be. Look at those trusts where you want to build more of a relationship with. Look at where, you know, you're doing your capital appeal. Where are those ones that you need to work on more? Then hopefully that will give you some breathing space further down the line. So I hope you found that really helpful, and that's answered some of the questions that we had from last month's Let's Chat, which you can rewatch again on YouTube if you missed any of that. We've got like probably a couple of seconds if anybody's got any questions, but you can always contact me offline if that would help. You should all have my email address from from the reminders actually for this trust. There was one thing I wanted to mention, that I'm thinking about doing some co-working space once a month on our trust fundraising hub. And I wondered whether any of you would find that useful. So we would just sit for an hour and we would work on some applications together. So just bring along what you wanted to work on for that hour, because I know sometimes trust fundraising can feel a little bit isolating, even if you have some other fundraising teams in your organisation. So if you would find that really helpful, that's something I'm looking to develop, and maybe we can start that in April. And then I'd be around during the hour for us to have a little chat, ask any questions. You know, suddenly you come stuck with something, can't think of a word for something or whatever, then we can answer those questions together and we can work on them as a team. So if that's something you're interested in, then if you've got any thoughts and feelings around that, please do let me know, and that's something I can look to develop. So it's been so wonderful. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been so interesting to hear your feedback. If you've got any topics that you'd like to discuss next month, please do let me know. Otherwise, have a fantastic rest of the month, and hopefully I'll see you on the 24th of March. Take care, everyone. Bye.